So I am so happy to introduce to you our two speakers tonight. We have Stefan Platzer with us, and we have Steve Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yes, got it right.
Yes.
They were both sailors on the ship that you are going to learn a little bit about tonight. So they are going to tell you about the voyage that they went on. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to Stefan.
Hello. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I would like to see a hands of how many people are from Massachusetts.
Well, originally.
Okay, that means that you are the owners of this vessel. It is now the official vessel of Massachusetts. If you're not from Massachusetts, you can wave and wave to the people on their boat. Basically, Steve and I brought the boat back from Africa 40 years ago, and we want everybody in Massachusetts to know that it is the official vessel. A lot of people don't know that. Again, it's such an important history of it and bringing it back, and that's the story I will be talking about. I was the radio operator on the Ernestina, and I had to climb up the mast, which is about 40, 50 feet tall, every day, and broadcast to the world that we were still alive. Okay.
I think maybe she went to get batteries. I think it wasn't.
It wasn't working?
Wasn't working.
Okay.
Do you want me
Give it a kick.
to? Yeah,
Gently.
there you go.
Okay, the boat was built in 1894, and this statue is in Gloucester, Massachusetts. It's dedicated to all those people, fishermen basically, who went out to the sea and never returned. And the list is thousands of people who died, and it's dedicated to those people. And this is the son of the original captain of the Ernestina, which at that time was called the Morrissey. The daughter, her name was Effie Morrissey. So the son became a statue, and the daughter became a boat. Next. Okay, this is the boat way back when. It had topsails in the bottom, and it mainly went up the coast, up to Canada, to Newfoundland, to go fishing. And it was built, cost about $16,000 at that point. And during that first voyage, they came back with more fish, which they got more money to pay for that first construction of the boat. So after that, it was all profit. The Effie Morrissey, after about 40 years of sailing, was taken over by Bob Bartlett. Bob Bartlett was the person who brought Perry to the North Pole. And there's rumors that actually Bob Bartlett got to the pole, the North Pole, before Perry, but Perry got the credit for it. So there's also, during this period, a lot of rich men and families sent their sons to Bob Bartlett so that they would learn how to sail. So there is a whole bunch of people that are still alive who are called the Bob Bartlett Boys. And they are the people who sailed up into the Arctic and explored for over 30 years. And shortly after World War II, there were two cousins who wanted to go to the Pacific Ocean. They restored the boat. They made it really fancy because they were rich people. And as they were restoring the boat, it caught on fire. So they sank the boat to put out the fire. Then the two people didn't want the boat anymore. And then this man here, Mendez, he took over the boat. And his daughter was Ernestina. So it was always the women that got the name on this boat. And he used it basically for about 30 years to bring supplies to Africa, to the Cape Verde Islands, and immigrants from the Cape Verdeans. And there's a lot of Cape Verdean people along the coast of New England. They were fishermen and so forth. And then the Cape Verdean government wanted to give it to the United States as a gift for the bicentennial celebration. They set sail, and the mast fell down. So they had to go back to Cape Verde and restore it again. And that's when Steve and I got very much involved in this project. I originally told my company I was going to go away for 3 weeks. Well, 3 months later, I showed up back for work. We're a little bit slower, I guess, than we anticipated.
What year was that?
How he got the boat out?
Pardon me?
How he got the boat out of the water?
They basically hauled it out, dragged it over to the shore, and then fixed it up again. Yep. And this is Effie Morrissey, the daughter.
Ernestina.
Ernestina, I'm sorry. And this is when it was in New Bedford. And that's kind of the home of the Ernestina.
What year did you go down together?
It was 40 years ago, exactly, and that's why I'm giving this talk now. I originally, 25 years after we brought it back, I gave a speech. I promoted the voyage by publishing my journal that I kept at that time. It was for my future wife, the book, and I had to take the naughty parts out of it. And
Private.
you're all welcome to purchase the book afterwards. And one of my naughty stories is that I have a good friend who bought 50 copies of this book, and I asked him why he gave it to all his friends, and he said it's great bedtime reading material. And I said, why? It puts them right to sleep. It was never meant to be published. It was not a great novel or anything like that. It was just a day-to-day journal of what was going on at that time.
Well, you flew from here.
We went to Portugal first, Lisbon. Then we picked up the sail there, and then flew down to Cape Verde Islands, yes.
So from Portugal, you went to Canary Island?
No, to the
Just
Cape Verde
directly
Islands.
to Cape Verde.
Directly, yeah.
And then you came by the coast of Brazil?
We didn't go down to Brazil. We just along the equator and then went north.
Okay.
Basically, we were sailing in the northeast trades.
Yeah, I know the currents comes
For as long
like
as we
from
could.
Africa
Yeah.
to America, and there's a sail that it takes every year on November. They leave from Canary Island, go do the same route.
Yeah,
They
okay.
go route to Cape Verde, and then they come back up by the other side. But that's why I wanted to have an idea how was the trip.
I'll tell you a little bit more as I go along here. Okay, this is the man who lived on this boat. It was his home. And he basically had to give up his home when he brought the boat over back to the United States. And it was probably one of the hardest parts to me to see these people who lived on this for many, many years giving up their home just to dedicate it to the United States. This is us putting sand on the boat. We needed the ballast so the boat wouldn't tip over in the waves. We did a lot of restoring. And we wanted to leave on the 4th of July. But the 5th of July is the Independence Day of the Cape Verdeans. And one of the wonderful experiences was the Cape Verdeans don't have much money, they don't have much food, so forth, but they truly enjoy life. They enjoy dancing, music, chatting with each other, and it was a wonderful experience getting to know them, even though we didn't speak their language of Creole or kind of Portuguese. It was really wonderful what they did for us. And in the town square, the parents would sit, and the beautiful women would walk one way, and the guys would walk the other way, checking each other out. And the parents made sure that the two behaved. The Cape Verde Islands is volcanic. Doesn't have much rain. There was plantations at one point there, a lot of it, but there isn't really now. This is called a reefer boat. It's basically refrigeration, and it basically caught fish, stored it. But the nice thing about it was that it had beer and it had showers. So we spent a lot of time there.
Stefan,
Yes?
and also people who spoke English, right?
Yeah. Okay, as I mentioned, we wanted to leave on the 4th, and on the 5th of July is their Independence Day, and the president of the country had to say goodbye to us. So we had to wait a little bit longer. We actually took off about a week after that. People always asked us, how fast can we get to the United States? And the fastest it ever did was 21 days. We thought it was kind of late in the season, so 23 days. Well, 42 days we showed up in America. So the summer doldrums going across the equator, and I've never seen the ocean perfectly flat like a mirror. There's usually some ripples, but this was totally flat. We actually drifted backwards for a whole week. Again, this is my view, being the antenna person. The captain is the person on the left side, and my good friend Steve Brown is on the right side. He was basically our medical, taking care of our medical problems. His mother was in Amherst, and she is the founder of the Springfield Symphony. And his father was a medical doctor in Amherst, and we felt he knew a little bit about being a medical doctor, and we all survived.
What was the name, the family name? White?
Pardon me?
What was the family name?
Brown.
Brown.
Yep. The pole that's on the side here is called a man overboard pole. Steve Hopkins picked it up in Portugal, and if someone fell overboard, the idea was to throw it over and mark where they died, because we really couldn't turn around. We were basically a one-way trip.
We had no engine, no engine.
This is the woman that was on board, Peggy. man on the right is one of the Americans. He comes from New Bedford. He is now in the Philippines. And he's chatting with the people there. Each American was paired up with a Cape Verdean crew member. There were 6 Americans and 6 Cape Verdean crew members, plus the captain and the first mate. And we didn't know their language, but we still got along, and our lives depended upon each other. This is below deck. We had, in the red tank was our water supply, and we had bananas, and we had chickens. And after a certain period of time, the water started tasting like chicken shit. We also had live animals on board, and they were slaughtered. We would basically take at least a week or so to kill and eat the whole pig. My partner was the cook, and he would come around chasing me with a hatchet and say, "I'm going to have you for supper." And that's the cook. And again, I didn't really know their language, but we got along very well. This is repairing the sail that we brought from Portugal. It was falling apart, but they are really experts. We also had a lifeboat with us, but it would have been impossible really to put it overboard and jump into it. So we would have been dead. So in a certain way, it was good that there wasn't a lot of wind, so we could survive. The captain did all the navigation by the sextant. He taught navigation in Lisbon, was a real expert about it, and I wasn't really quite sure if he knew where we were going. So I was a radio operator. I would call up a neighboring boat and ask, "Where are we?" And he was dead on always. He was always perfectly correct. It was truly amazing. The other thing I was a little bit afraid of before we left, he was getting drunk every night and had many girlfriends he had to say goodbye to. And so I wasn't quite sure if he would, what would he be like as a captain? But as soon as we got on board, all alcohol was forbidden. So it became a very straightforward journey. And I think that's Steve right there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
They did all the calculations by the logarithmic tables. No calculators in those days. And that's the antenna up there. There's a little reflector up there, so if a passing boat saw us, it would know that there's a boat around. This was one of the scariest parts of the trip. This boat, the Fairview Venture, it was about 2 miles away from us. It wanted to see who we were, so it turned around and approached us and almost rammed us. The bow waves basically pushed our boat a little bit away. It was really scary. And we actually had to wake up all the people on deck to make sure that we would all survive. We also had 4 hours on and 4 hours off. So people really couldn't sleep longer than 4 hours, which was really hard for some people. But the radio operator got to sleep whenever he wanted to. This is a burial at sea. The captain threw the ashes out, and you would think the captain would know which way the wind is blowing, and it blew it right into his face. His navigation was perfect, but his knowledge about wind, no.
I forgot about that.
We were running out of water because of the chicken and because of the length of our voyage. So we eventually had to catch rainwater. And if it wasn't for that rain, we wouldn't have survived. We would have had to call up a neighboring boat and say, please rescue us. This is what is called a New England sleigh ride. And I always thought of a New England sleigh ride as a sled that's going through the snow, going from one village to the next. That's not correct. It is really the wind at the back of the boat that's pushing the boat the fastest it will go and get to the harbor the fastest and charge the most money for the fish. And that's why they could become really rich if they got there and had the wind behind them. So the New England sleigh ride is a boat story. It had nothing to do with snow. This is the person who lived on the boat. And again, it was sad to see him have to give up his home. That's handsome me. That's why my future wife, I think, adored me. If you see in the background, that's the hatchet that was supposed to go into my back. Again, the view from the top. I'm really afraid of heights, but I had no choice. And this is another amazing story. In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, these little birds arrived. And at that time, in the sand were sandbugs, and they were maturing, and they were eating us alive. It was really painful. We were bleeding. And it was really miserable. But these birds here came and ate every single last bug. They went down into our bunks, ate the bugs there. They would walk on your hand, eat the bugs. And it's like Mother Nature, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, these small little tiny little birds saved us from a miserable time. We also caught fish. There were a lot of schools, and what I learned is that the first fish you catch, keep in the water, and take all the other ones, and take the first one that you caught, and then pull that out at last. Because the other ones come around and try to protect the one that's caught, and therefore you can catch all the other ones that are trying to save that first fish. And this is this picture of the water perfectly flat. Again, a week going backwards. And I wanted to get back to my future wife. And this, yes, Steve?
Oh, I was just going to say, we called it Ernestina cruising weather.
I would refer to it as drifting. We didn't cruise anyway, we were cruising backwards. Okay, this is us pulling into Newport, Rhode Island. And this was probably the most dangerous part of the whole voyage, because the passenger boat that wanted to see us wanted to give us beer, and they were throwing beer cans at us. To be hit in the head with a beer can hurts. And then it basically arrived in the United States. It was eventually taken over by Massachusetts. The U.S. government didn't really want it. And then it fell apart again. And now it's in Booth Bay, Maine again, in the shipyard, being restored again. And and not by us, and it's taking about 6 years as opposed to the 3 months that we did it. But it's totally being redone.
Do you know what they're gonna do with it when it's redone?
The whole goal is, we arrived back in August, and they want to bring it down from Booth Bay and bring it to New Bedford, and the president of Cape Verde will fly over with his wife, and we will have a big celebration there for the 40th birthday of our anniversary of bringing that boat back. And the whole goal is, it belongs to the Massachusetts Maritime Academy now, and young kids are to be taught how to bond together, how to work together, and survive together. And to me, the saddest part of the whole trip was having to say goodbye to the Cape Verdeans. They could not stay in America because most of them were illegal immigrants at that point. And our lives for 3 months depended upon each other. And to say goodbye to these wonderful people was really sad. And I miss them. I have not been back there. I don't know where they are. I know the American crew. 2 are dead, unfortunately. One's in the Philippines, another one's in California, and Steve and I are the other 2. This is the boat taken out of the water. And as I pointed out, the man at the wheel, that wheel is very important because it's the exact same model that's on this boat, and it's the only original piece on this boat. So I say, if you go on this boat, touch that wheel. Presidents, famous people, movie stars, etc., have touched that wheel. And this is when we arrived back in the United States. That's our son. He's at the wheel. And that's me. I had a little bit more beard then. So if there's any questions, please let me know. That's kind of the end of my talk, and then Steve will take over. But if there's questions, please ask. Yes?
How do you keep your, what do you use for electricity?
We really didn't have anything.
You had a radio.
We had a little bit of batteries, but we were running basically out of electricity, yes.
Well, actually, we had a generator to recharge the batteries. And I was responsible for getting that and getting it to Cape Verde. We also had a gasoline-powered bilge pump, which we would test once in a while. So.
Yes?
So what was your background? How did you get involved in this to begin with?
I grew up, my parents were sailors. And my story is, my father was born in Norway. And I thought I had Viking blood in me. So I went to London, went to the London Museum there and asked, what can you show me about Vikings in England? He said, I'm not going to show you anything, but go over to Norway, because there's a man there built a replica of a Viking ship. He was a Canadian. And I went over there, and I wanted to sail it from Norway to Canada. But they realized that the longship was not the type of boat that Vikings would use. There's a different type of boat called the Knar. And the Canadian guy said, okay, we're not going to sail it. So we sailed it only to England and put it in a museum. So that's part of my story. Also, I have a lot of friends. I've sailed around Cape Horn in the wintertime. My favorite story there is we went around the Cape Horn, no problem whatsoever, beautiful. Then we thought, okay, we're going to go to Antarctica now. And then a storm came, and we had 60-foot waves. So we pulled quickly into a harbor, and it was a beautiful moon, and there was a waterfall. It looked gorgeous. Well, it turned out the waterfall was fresh water and froze on the salt water. So we had to chip our way out of there. And I've done a lot of adventures in Greece. All my family loves to sail. I think it's in their blood now. It's a great adventure of being on on a boat, and your life depending upon other people, and hopefully surviving. Yes.
I'm still curious, though. You came out from Cape Verde, you didn't touch any other port, nothing. You just came all the way, like pure ocean, all the way to here to.
It basically went from east to west across the equator, and then went up north along the coast of North.
But you didn't touch any other port during the way
No.
up to Massachusetts?
We went straightly. We survived for those 42 days, just going direct.
No, I thought,
Curse.
like you were going past by all the eastern coast of the state, you made.
We could have made stops, yes, but then, then we would have to go out. And also, we didn't have a motor, so we couldn't really go into harbors and ports and things like that. It was best that we went directly. And we wanted to get back home as quickly as possible. Because if people can do it in 21 days. Anybody else? Question? Yes.
You said originally that people were living on the boat and that it was the Cape Verde government basically gave the boat to the United States for the bicentennial.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, did the people living on it own it, or did the government own it? I mean, how did the government just took it from them?
They did not own it. They just lived on it.
Oh, okay.
It was basically, they were there to take care of the boat, keep it alive, so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
But
And again,
they
it
were
was-
related to the guy who took it out from the water?
Pardon me?
They were related from the guy you show us the picture that took it out from the water?
No. Well, that was back in 1947 when the boat sank. And then a few years later, it went over to Cape Verde, sailed back and forth for many years. And then during the last couple of years, from the time from the bicentennial, basically, these people lived on that boat because they were there to restore it, take care of it, and so forth, and help us bring it back after the bicentennial. Yes, Sue?
How did you cook? What sort of
I didn't cook.
was used?
It was basically gas, but and usually with the pigs, you eat the soft stuff first, and then you wait for the meat to come later. But there was no refrigeration on the boat, but we all survived. Anybody else have a question? All right, I think Steve would like to chat for a little bit.
Okay, so I guess one of the big questions is how did I get involved with the Ernestina? And in 1974, I went to work for the South Street Seaport Museum in Manhattan as on restoration of the waiver tree. It's about a 260-foot iron full rig ship. But so I found out about Ernestina through those connections. And finally, they said there was going to be a meeting in March at the Mystic Seaport, and that people who were interested should go and sign up and so forth. So I went and I signed up, but I put my name at the very bottom of the list because I really didn't think I had a chance. And about 2 weeks later, I got a call from someone in New Bedford, and he said, "Oh, Steve, we hear that you're the chief scrounge for the waiver tree, and we'd like you to start getting stuff together for the Ernestina." So I went out. I advanced the money, but I got reimbursed because they did actually have a few $1,000s there. But we bought a large container of sea biscuits, and I got storm sails off a 60-foot sloop that would add extra effort, I made 2 heaving lines. These are lines you throw to get the to get the big dock lines ashore. A huge tin of peanut butter, a bunch of portable handheld foghorns, because I knew we were going to be going near Block Island, and that's a big fog factory. Let's see. So finally, the great day came, and I was storing all the stuff that I got in my apartment house at Staten Island. Landlord was kind enough to let me store it there, and so myself and my friend Lenny, we hired a U-Haul truck, put everything into the back, headed out to Kennedy Airport, just pulled up to the curb, and I went in and talked to the gate agent, and he said, "Oh, we weren't expecting you. What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, we have tickets, and we have some excess baggage." So the guy came out and he took a look, and he said, "Oh, okay, I can give you a container. It will be stored in the hold." And so that's what we did. And let's see. So at about 4 o'clock in the morning, we landed at Saul. And it's just like what it sounds like. Their only product is salt, which they get from the ocean, that they let it come into ponds, it evaporates, then they scrape it up and put it aside. So we had to get over to Mindelo, where the Ernestina was. So they had like a DC-4, ancient plane, even in the 1970s. We took off. The trade winds were still blowing pretty strongly. The pilot flew over the airport at a low altitude twice, and then he aborted. He went back to Saul. He said the wind was too strong. And if he didn't want to land, I sure as heck didn't want to land either. At least he was upfront about it. So let's see. So myself and Norman Gomes and Ted Miles were the people who came over from New York with all of the kit and caboodle that we got together. And the other folks came in from Portugal, having picked up the sails, and I don't know, maybe a few other miscellaneous things. And eventually we got to the ship, and of course, everybody had said that we're going to be ready to leave in about a week. And I walked down the pier, and my heart sank, because we were nowhere near ready to leave in about a week. And so we started work. Well, first of all, we had accommodations for 3 or 4 nights in the pension that the government picked up with meals, the expenses. But later, almost immediately, we moved on board, but we still ate at the pension. And the work that we did was mostly sanding and painting, ballast. We built a plywood box for the generator to protect it from the seawater. We made a shower on deck with a tank for salt water that we painted black. Nice warm salt water. So the trade winds, I was trying to monitor the trade winds as best I could. And some days they were stronger than other days. But I figured as long as they continued blowing, we'd be okay. And things were looking pretty good in that regard. And then we made a trip out to the shipyard in Cape Verde, where the ship was restored. And so it was really just to take a look. And it was like a step back in time. They had a single piston diesel engine, and you could hear it all through the yard, whoomp, 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 whoomp. And then they had a series of belts that ran every which way, some upside down, some going different directions. And every single power tool in the shop was powered by that one, by the belt system. It was very complex. It didn't meet any OSHA standards, believe me. You didn't want to mess with those belts. And I found a very important piece of the ship's gear out there. It's called a fish hook. It's just basically a large hook like this. It has a little eye at the top, and it's used for handling the anchor. It's very important. And the Cape Verdeans, at least from my viewpoint, made it pretty clear that they were going to do all of the rigging and all of the important sail bending work and all of that type of material. But then there was the day they had a big coil of rope down below, and they started uncoiling it from the outside. And that works okay until you get about 1/3 of the way through. And then when you get to that point, the whole coil collapses. And it collapses in knots, tight knots. So I decided that I would haul it all up on deck and lay it out and take all the knots out of it by going around to the left, because it's right-handed rope. And then I made it up in stops in a big loose coil and put it back where it was. And I didn't say a word. And nobody said a word to me, but they must have figured out that I was the one that did it. And then we had a near disaster with the boat, which nobody knows about, or very few people. At the pier, at the slip where we were, there were very high walls running up from the water. And I would say they were probably about 20 feet high. I'm not quite sure why they made them so high, but that's the way it was. And so I was there one day, and the Cape Verdean crew had gone home for a 2-hour lunch, which is fine. That's what the whole country does. And 4 rogue waves came in, kind of one after the other. And that, I don't know, maybe there was an underwater landslide, or maybe there was a minor earthquake, because the islands are still geologically active in that regard. And pretty soon the boat was going one way, and the boom was going the other way, because they only had it, if this is my arm, the only thing they had securing it was the topping lift out here going up like that. They didn't have any lines going over like this. And so I'm standing there with a block and a line in it, holding the block in one hand and the hook in the other. And by standing on my tippy toes, I just managed to hook the boom bail, which is the curved piece that the main sheet block rides on. So I got it under control very quickly. But if the boat had been going one way and the boom had been going the other way, it would have broken. And that would have been the end of the trip right there, because they could never have gotten another boom. So, and once again, I didn't say a word. All right. Days off. We did have a few days off. We went across to San Antao, neighboring island, maybe 20 miles or so away. That was interesting. We rented a Toyota truck and went up through the hills and then up the mountain, and then we were going down on the other side and to have lunch. Well, as it turned out, lunch turned out to be a bunch of candy bars. That's all that was available. So we ate the candy bars and headed back. And the higher up you went in the Cape Verde Mountains, volcanoes, they get more and more moisture. So there actually were some trees on the very top. So that was kind of interesting. And let's see. Oh, so as we were driving back down, and we had a chauffeur, I'm sure, we kept getting these rumors from cars coming the other way that the ferry boat was not coming back for the evening run. And when we arrived back at the dock, it was confirmed the ferry boat was not coming. So we got together and had a little conference, and Norman decided that he was going to call the portmaster and tell them that if he wanted to see us back at work the next morning, they had to send the boat over. So they sent over a tugboat, and it was supposed to be just for us. And then there was a young lady who was very, very pregnant and way past her due date. And the fellow who was the medical officer there at the dock, and I guess for the whole island, really, he felt he couldn't deal with it anymore. So she was carried on board along with her mother and Peggy, and they all went down below to a cabin where she proceeded to get very seasick and threw up all over the place. But they were the first people off at the dock on the other side, straight to the hospital. Peggy went to see her the next day, and there was a girl, and they named it Ernestina. So there's an Ernestina over there running around somewhere, probably. So let's see. Okay, so finally we were getting ready to leave, and the president of the country did come around and ask each one of us if we really wanted to go on the trip. And we all said yes, of course. And I even told him that I'd had a fair amount of experience in the Gazela Primero, which was a Portuguese ship that went out to the Grand Banks. And I thought maybe he might have heard of it, but he didn't seem to make any connection with it. It's in Philadelphia. It's still in Philadelphia. And let's see, what else here? Oh, well, before we left, we had to have sea trials. And so we went out and we sailed along for a while. And then we tried to tack, putting the bow through the eye of the wind. And she would not go all the way around. I guess she just didn't have enough sail power to do it. So we had to back the staysail. That's the jib that has a club boom on it. So we just backed it into the wind like this, and it brought her right around and brought her back. I think it's the only time we ever tacked, actually. Then there was the incident with the heaving lines. I had made the heaving lines, so I knew how long they were. And the captain, and I'm standing there ready to go, and the captain comes up and says, "Heave it, heave it, heave it." But I knew it was too short. But I didn't know enough Creole to tell him that it was too short. So eventually he was very adamant, and so eventually I heaved it, and the monkey fist hit the edge of the pier and fell in the water. Very, very embarrassing for all concerned. But it was a perfect throw. It just wasn't long enough, which I knew. So anyway, for the first two weeks or so, we had pretty good sailing in the trade winds. We averaged about 125, 130 nautical miles a day, plus somewhere in that range. The captain was very careful with his navigation, taking star sights and moon sights and sun sights and so forth. And he had a good chronometer, so that I wasn't too worried about that, unless we ran into a long period of bad weather when he couldn't see the horizon. Let's see, sea trials. Okay, well, this is a little out of sequence, but basically, the main thing that one of the things that I purchased was a huge container of instant oatmeal, and I thought that would be good. It would stick to your ribs and keep the hunger at bay. And so that was for breakfast, and then for lunch they had soup made by the cook, and pilot crackers, and fruit, and peanut butter. And then for dinner was fish or pork or chicken and potatoes and whatever we could find. For water, we had 3 55-gallon drums of water from a desalinization plant on the island. And there was also that large tank below decks that you saw, which I'm pretty sure was original to the ship because it had a riveted construction. So I'm pretty sure that was an original tank. Well, communications with the captain were difficult because he just didn't speak any English at all. Let me see, what else have I got here? Oh, when we were leaving, if they posted the watch schedule, with starboard watch, port watch, and I'm looking, and my name wasn't on either the starboard or the port watch. So the only conclusion I could come to was that I was a day man. And the old-time sailors used to refer to them as idlers, day idlers. And this would be things like the sailmaker, the carpenter, the bosun, but with a much bigger crew, of course. And so I just slept through the night and nobody said a word. So all I can think, they gave me, I would call it a battlefield promotion based on all the extra work that I did, because I'm, and getting stuff together in New York and getting it there, et cetera, et cetera. So I was really happy about that. At least that's my interpretation of what happened. Once again, I couldn't really ask the captain because I couldn't talk to him. Okay, so we had two weeks of pretty good sailing, and then one morning someone said, "Oh, we're just south of Bermuda. It'll be another week or so, then we'll be up the East Coast, maybe another 2 weeks or something." But we ran right into the middle of the Bermuda High. Everything came to a complete stop. Some days we went forward, some days we went backwards, but small amounts, 10 or 15 miles, just nothing. We found that in the really light going, the only way you could tell you were moving, these little tiny ripples would come off of the bow. And in the flat water, you could actually see them coming off the bow. So you knew you were moving, but sometimes you couldn't tell. And of course, the other problem is in really light weather like that, the ship loses steerage. So you just lash the helm and walk away from it because she won't answer the helm, so you just lash it. And because it's not good to have the rudder banging back and forth in the water. So anyway, and then finally it was mid-August. The winter westerlies had started up fitfully, so we were able to work our way north. We had one day of good sailing crossing the Gulf Stream. That's quite normal, apparently. There's just something about the Gulf Stream and the difference in the air temperature and the humidity that makes it rain and be windy there almost always when you cross. So after a while, somebody said, "Oh, well, we're south of Block Island. Now we'll really be home fine." But no, the wind died again, and we were kind of on the edge of the Gulf Stream. So there's a general drift. So we were generally drifting to kind of the east-northeast, which was sort of out to sea. And we kind of timed it out, you know, we saw Block Island, or where Block Island was, and then we checked, and we were south of Nantucket Shoals. Now, Nantucket Shoals is a place that you don't want to go, because the water is always roiling and always boiling. It's unpredictable, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So we kept on drifting and drifting, and then after a while, we were getting out about halfway out the Cape, and I'm thinking, oh, God, we're going to have to get a tow to get in. And that would have been very difficult, because the captain wanted to bring her in under his own terms. But fortunately, a backdoor, you New Englanders are probably familiar with a backdoor cold front. Oh, all right. Well, normally cold fronts come from the west. This cold front came from the east, and it gave us just enough oomph so that we could sail back over the course of about 24 hours, I guess, and end up south of Block Island. And then at that point, the prevailing southwesterlies kicked in and drove us right up to Newport. And so after all of that, it was announced that the captain was going to anchor in the Newport Channel. And I'm thinking, I happen to know that water is very deep. So sure enough, he insisted. He dropped the anchor. And, I'm thinking, as the chain's running out, we're going to have to crank all that back in. Plus, it was so deep that the anchor probably wouldn't have held anyway, because he didn't really have enough chain in the locker to do it. But fortunately, at about that time, the tugboat turned up. Huge, huge tugboat, totally inappropriate. And let's see, what else happened? Oh, he took a little strain on a line and held us in position, because there's a lot of current there. So we just had to pick the chain up straight up, not be pulling the boat along with us. So it was a lot easier. And we got the chain in, and then we tied up at the pier at Fort Adams, and that was it. I went home with somebody the next day, found out that my telephone was about to be disconnected for non-payment of the bill. So I explained to the lady that I would put a check in the mail immediately, and she agreed, and they never shut the phone off. So anyway.
Was there a greeting party?
Oh, you mean on the pier?
Yeah.
I can't. I guess there was. Yeah, there was. Yeah. Let me see. Becalmed. I think that's it. Are there any questions? So I hope I didn't bore you too much, but.
And that you guys didn't have.
Yeah, wow.
That's why they got around so well. Oars. You're in a long road.
Yeah. Well, it was a very arduous trip. I could never do it again, or especially not today. Forget about it. And
Where's it at now?
it's in Booth Bay, being restored again. A rebuild. It's a rebuild. It's not a restore. It's a rebuild. Renewal. That's the word.
Where? New Bedford, Mass. New Bedford.
Yeah.
It's going to be part of the Whaling Museum, plus the Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Yeah. It's officially Massachusetts, so all those people from Massachusetts, it's your boat.
When did you expect it to be arrived there?
They're having the celebration on the 29th of August. They wanted their and they may just drag it down there for the celebration. And they have to repair it either in Bedford or bring it back to Booth Bay. The whole idea is to celebrate it on the day that we arrive back in the United States. It's a historical day.
Are you gonna be on it or?
No.
You deserve to be.
They have the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
asked the new captain, who's a woman, young woman, to come here for this talk. She's in Wisconsin right now. But she knows about the future of the boat. And the whole idea is to get these young people, the way we were together for all those days, working together, cooperating, and making sure that we survive. That's important.
One restore, they're gonna be open for the public to visit.
Yes,
It's gonna be in the water or it's gonna be outside the water?
it's gonna be in the water, yes. It's gonna be used for the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, so, you know, the people from the public can't use it. But it's also gonna be part of the Whaling Museum, where you can actually take tours or whatnot, just walk on it. And it'll also then travel around in the harbor and so forth, so you'll also be able to put your hand on that wheel.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there. It's made by a company that's still in business called Edson, Edson. They also make hand-powered bilge pumps. They don't have too much call for them now, but they could probably get you one if you decided you needed to replace the old one.
They put any kind of a motor engine on the?
Yes, a big one.
Yeah,
The propeller's enormous.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of it, and it's not the way we did it.
yeah, no, we had,
It's gonna have modern equipment now.
Yes.
Yeah,
the way
it's
the
gonna
bunks are
be,
set up now at
yeah.
the bottom, it's really high class, it's all electronic. You can bring your computers with you and do all sorts of stuff.
yeah,
Not
that's not the
navigation by the
same, though.
sextant.
no,
It's not the same.
no, it's not the same.
And you won't get that same bonding, that same dependency, because everything is.
They will.
They will.
When
Yeah.
you're on an island like that, a very small little island, 105 feet long,
Oh,
you bond together.
Yeah, that's true,
You
sure.
depend upon each other. You can't just sit in the corner and do nothing. You really have to work together.
Right, right.
Do you stay in touch with the rest of the crew? How many still live?
two died.
Well, there were 6 Americans, and I know the 6. 2 of those died. There's the 2 here, one's in the Philippines and the other one's in California.
Yeah.
I
San
don't know the
Francisco,
people over in Africa, what happened to them. I
Yeah.
would like to know, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
How did they get back?
On what?
How did they get back?
They flew back.
yeah.
Why the government didn't grant them the
They
stay
could have
here
if they
for-
wanted to, but I think their families were back there.
Yeah.
They wanted to be back in the Cape Verde Islands.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
There's a strong Cape Verde community here. They would have been very welcome to stay here. But also, if your families are out there back in the Cape Verde Islands, that's where you go, back home.
Yeah,
Whereabouts is that located, Cape Verde?
If you look at Africa, there's a big bulb on the west coast. If you go a little bit out to the ocean, that's where it's located.
yeah.
And they're not gonna,
They're about 300 miles offshore. And the trade winds are just getting started. So sometimes they're strong and sometimes they're not. But yeah, they're about 300 miles offshore.
and as a courtesy, when they inaugurated, they are not planning to like send the tickets to those guys to bring them in. That would be nice, to that celebration after 40 years.
They were
Bring
older
those guys
than we
back
are.
on, maybe to,
They may not be alive, I don't know
Yeah,
what the other crew members.
yeah. I
The
think of that.
captain has already passed away.
huh?
The captain has passed away, the captain's dead.
Yeah, but there were 6 from Cape Verde.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
But
possible.
there's
Yeah.
no way to connect to them and invite them just to come for the inauguration.
That's a
and
wonderful
maybe they
idea,
go
that's a
back.
wonderful idea, we'll suggest.
That would be
it to the
nice.
city.
I think they have been invited, and as I say, the president's coming with his wife. He may be bringing other people with him. I'm not sure who. We
Yeah,
have to ask the new captain about what's actually happened. I
yeah.
don't know the details.
Did Cape Verde have any role in World War II?
Not really, no.
No, I don't think so. you know.
But
It was
the
Portuguese.
Ernestina did, the Ernestina was used during World War II in Greenland. And I think it was probably patrolling.
Yeah.
Looking for submarines.
Submarine patrol and
Had a very shallow draft, that's why.
yeah.
I do know what 60 waves look like though.
Oh yeah. You don't want to be around.
They go over 60 degrees.
Yeah.
Yes.
How is a new captain assigned?
What?
How is a new captain assigned? You said there's a new captain of the ship. How does that happen?
From the Mass Maritime Academy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's on the faculty.
Oh, okay. I missed the beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming. And